I never thought I'd be writing about something like this, but I need to get it off my chest. My name is Sarah Williams, and this is the story of how my family fell apart during the summer of 2024 in our small Idaho town. I was home from college for the summer break, having just finished my junior year at the University of Washington. Our family farm sat on the outskirts of Millwood, population barely 2,000. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everyone else's business, or at least they thought they did. Growing up, it had always been just Dad and me after Mom passed away when I was 7. But 5 years ago, Dad married Ashley, bringing her and a whole new dynamic into our lives. Ashley was different from my mom, younger, more energetic, and determined to be the cool stepmom. She tried hard, maybe too hard, to fit in with us. My younger half-brother Mike was born during Dad's first marriage, but had lived with his mother until he was 15, when she decided to move to California with her new husband. Mike chose to stay behind with Dad, and that's when our blended family really took shape. He was now taking classes at the local community college while helping Dad with the farm. The first signs that something was wrong appeared about a week after I got home. I noticed the subtle glances between Ashley and Mike during dinner, the way they seemed to find reasons to be in the same room together when Dad was out working in the fields. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination running wild. One particularly hot July afternoon, I came home early from my summer job at the local library. The house was quiet, but I heard muffled voices coming from the basement. I went to investigate, thinking maybe Mike was having trouble with the washing machine again. What I saw through the partially open door stopped me in my tracks, Ashley and Mike in an embrace that was anything but motherly. I fled upstairs, my heart pounding. For days, I carried this secret around like a heavy stone in my stomach. I watched Dad come home every evening, tired from working the farm, completely unaware of what was happening under his own roof. The guilt of knowing was eating me alive. I started avoiding family dinners, making excuses about meeting friends or having to study, but every time I saw Ashley and Mike together, their secret looks and careful distance in front of others made me feel sick. The worst part was seeing how they acted so normal around Dad, like nothing was wrong. One evening, about 2 weeks after my discovery, I confronted Ashley when we were alone. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "I know what's going on between you and Mike," I said, my voice shaking despite my attempt to sound firm. Ashley froze, the knife she was using to chop vegetables suspended mid-air. "Sarah, it's not what you think." "Really? Because I think it's exactly what I think." "How could you do this to Dad?" She set down the knife and turned to face me, her eyes pleading. "You don't understand, Mike. He reminds me so much of your father when he was younger. We never meant for this to happen." "You never meant for it? You're his stepmother. You're supposed to be a parent to him, not." I couldn't even finish the sentence. The conversation that followed was long and painful. Ashley broke down, admitting that the relationship with Mike had started 3 months ago. She claimed she had tried to end it several times but couldn't. She begged me not to tell Dad. I spent the next few days in turmoil, watching my father go about his daily routine, oblivious to the betrayal happening in his own home. I observed Mike's behavior more closely now, the way he seemed both guilty and defiant, how he couldn't quite meet my eyes anymore. The situation came to a head when Dad announced he had to go to Boise for a 3-day agricultural conference. The thought of leaving Ashley and Mike alone in the house for that long was more than I could bear. The night before Dad was supposed to leave, I finally broke. I went to his study where he was reviewing some paperwork. "Dad, I need to tell you something," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. He must have heard something in my tone, because he put down his papers and gave me his full attention. "What is it, sweetheart?" The words came tumbling out, along with tears I hadn't realized I'd been holding back. I told him everything. What I'd seen, my conversation with Ashley, the guilty looks and secret meetings. Throughout my confession, Dad sat perfectly still, his face growing paler by the minute. When I finished, he remained silent for so long I thought he might not have heard me. Finally, he stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the darkening fields. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice rough. "About 3 weeks," I admitted. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't know how." What followed was the worst night of our lives. Dad confronted both Ashley and Mike. There was shouting, crying, and the kind of angry words that can never be taken back. Mike tried to defend their relationship, claiming they were in love. Ashley alternated between tearful apologies and attempts to justify their actions. I stayed in my room, pillow over my head, trying to block out the sounds of my family imploding. Around midnight, I heard a car start and drive away. It was Ashley leaving with a hastily packed bag. The following weeks were like walking through a minefield. Mike moved out to stay with friends, unable to face Dad or me. Dad threw himself into his work, spending longer hours in the fields than ever before. The few times we saw Mike in town, he would turn and walk the other way. The gossip spread through our small town like wildfire. People at the grocery store would fall silent when I walked in, then start whispering as soon as I passed. Some blamed Ashley entirely. Others wondered what kind of father would let this happen in his home. A few even suggested I should have kept quiet and let sleeping dogs lie. Dad filed for divorce later that month. Ashley didn't contest it, and the proceedings were mercifully quick. She moved to Oregon, or at least that's what we heard. Mike dropped out of community college and took a job at a ranch in Montana. He sent Dad a letter about a month later, but Dad never opened it. As summer drew to a close, I struggled with whether to return to college or stay home with Dad. He insisted I go back, saying he would be fine. But I saw how this had aged him, how the betrayal had carved new lines in his face. "It's not your fault, Sarah," he told me the night before I left for Seattle. "You did the right thing telling me. Some truths hurt, but lies destroy." I've thought about those words often in the months since then. Our family will never be the same, but maybe that's not entirely bad. Dad and I are closer now, having weathered this storm together. He started dating again, very cautiously, a widow from the neighboring town who teaches at the elementary school. Mike calls me sometimes, late at night. He's working through things with a therapist, trying to understand how he let things go so far. He wants to apologize to Dad but doesn't know how. I tell him to give it time. As for Ashley, we heard she remarried recently. I hope she's gotten help too. Though I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forgive her for what she did to our family. Looking back on that summer, I realized that sometimes doing the right thing feels like the wrong thing while you're doing it. The truth can be painful, messy, and complicated. But secrets and lies are like poison. They destroy everything they touch. Our family isn't perfect anymore, if it ever was. We're broken in some ways, but we're healing in others. Dad smiles more these days, though it took almost a year before his laughs didn't sound forced. I'm finishing my senior year now and planning to move back home after graduation to help with the farm. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when Dad and I sit on the porch watching the sunset, I think about how different our lives might be if I hadn't come home early that summer day, if I hadn't gone down to the basement, if I hadn't spoken up. But then I look at Dad, at the peace that's slowly returning to his face, and I know I made the right choice. The truth may have shattered our family's illusion of perfection, but it also freed us from living a lie. And in the end, that's worth all the pain we went through to get here. They say time heals all wounds. I'm not sure I believe that completely, but I do know that time gives us perspective. What happened that summer changed us all, for better or worse, but life goes on, and so do we. Carrying our scars but also our hope for better days ahead. And maybe that's the real lesson in all of this, that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about loyalty, honesty, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it hurts. It's about picking up the pieces after everything falls apart and building something new, something stronger, from the ruins of what was lost. As I write this, sitting in my dorm room hundreds of miles away from home, I can't help but wonder about the next chapter in our family story. But whatever comes next, I know we'll face it together, Dad and me, stronger for having survived the summer that changed everything.